So we're talking about Git and GitHub, right? We've talked about the number of, let's refer to them as the learning outcomes for today. We're going to try and make sure that we understand what version control is, how to work with Git, and many other ways, how to create a GitHub repository, just the works. To help us understand all these things further, well, if you see on my screen here, what I have shared is basically a page to GitHub. When if you go to github.com, this is the first page that you get, right? So once you've created your account, I'm not going to show you the process of creating an account, but go to github.com, create an account, you'll be good to go. Now, once you have created an account, then you'll get this page here. This is like the feed, right? This is like the feed on GitHub. You'll see changes that people are making, the people that you are following, all that. But this is not super important. What is important at this point is your profile. So this is your GitHub profile. Again, those of you who are joining on TikTok, go to Discord. The link is on my bio. You'll find the link to the meeting. So this is my GitHub account. What you can see here, again, basically you use it not to track, but rather to store the code that you have, written, right? When you're writing your code, it primarily exists in your local machine. But you get to a point where maybe your machine might be spoiled, right? Or you start to use another machine, or you're not near your machine, but you still need to access the code and the project that you've been building. You do that by having the code on GitHub. Then you can log remotely from any other place, and you'll be able to access all the code that you have written. So this is GitHub. We're going to get into this in a moment. In GitHub we work with things that we refer to as repositories, but we get into this in a moment as well. Now let's move back to Git, and to help us understand Git further, I'm going to open my terminal. You can be able to see my terminal, I believe. Yeah, I believe you can see my terminal. I've created this folder that I'm going to be working with. The first thing you need to understand about Git is basically the setup process, right? I'm going to go ahead and get the I'm going to get a link for you that I'll send as an article. Where is it? I'm looking for this. Yeah, I'm going to. It's pretty far down in this blog of mine, but I'm going to send you the link to that you can use to do a quick setup. But I'm also going to use the same. But again, just in case you need to refer back to it in a moment, later on rather. Okay, it should be somewhere down here. This is roles. Okay, I remember I wrote this thing a long time ago, but all I know is, yeah, it's this is working with APIs. You come to this point, blockchain, WebAssembly. Okay, it should be somewhere here. It's here, Git 101. I'm going to send this link to the chat right now. Okay, you can be able to see the link I've sent. I'm not able to see the. Can you change the theme to light mode? No, I'm sorry, man. You have to work with what I have right now. I predominantly use dark mode, right? But still, you should be able to read everything from what I'm saying. If you need me to increase my font, I can increase my font. Let me actually just increase my font. Okay, I think this is big enough for everyone to basically use. But I've sent the link to this article on GitHub. So what you'll see here, this is the setup process when you want to use Git. To use Git, you have to set it up on your local machine first, right? The key difference that you're going to notice here, in my case, I'm using an Ubuntu machine, but the setup process is quite similar with the same setup process that you have if you're using a Windows machine, right? What you need to do is you need to go to the official website for Git. It's git-scm.com/downloads. When you come here, you'll be able to download Git, and you'll download it based on the operating system that you're using. In this case, you'll see there's a Mac OS, there's Windows, there's also Linux, right? I'm using Linux. I can use that. But again, I already have it set up on my machine, so I want to go through this process. But I believe most of you are using Windows. So you'll go to the Windows section, just click on Windows, then you'll see this here. Again, most of the machines that a lot of people are using are 64-bit machines. So select the setup for 64-bit. This one here. download this thing. So once you've downloaded it to your machine, just go through the simple installation process that you go through whenever you're using Git, or rather when you want to install anything that you want to install on your machine. Once you've done this installation, it does not end there. You need to be able to configure. You'll be able to configure your Git, right? In my case, I already like I mentioned, I already have it in my machine, so I can easily show you the configurations. When you're doing the configuration, these are the commands that you follow here, right? What you do is you'll go here, you'll just say git config, get config hyphen hyphen, not these are double hyphen, then you say global space, then you say user.name, and then after this you specify your name. This is the thing about Git. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we use Git to track the changes we make to our machines or to our code. We use it for collaboration. That means that any change that you make to our code, it needs to be associated with you or to you, right? How we do that, you use your name, so you'll be able to specify the name. In this case, write the name that you want to be known as. You can write anything. Some people use funny names, others use their own names. But you can write your name there. Again, I'm not going to write mine. I've already done this configuration as well. But if your name is Jackdo, you can just say Jackdo, hit enter, then it will set up your name. Again, you won't see any output, but you'll be able to see this. If you're wondering if you don't that you don't have a terminal, once you've done this, you've downloaded Git and you've installed it in your machine, then the next step that you do after that, there's a terminal that Git gives you. So you use that terminal that Git gives you. Or you can go ahead and use PowerShell. You can spin up PowerShell on your machine, or you use the other one is called CMD, command prompt. So it is the same terminal as what I'm seeing, just that the layout and the look is a bit different. Then this name is the name that you're going to be associated with, right? Once you have the name set up, the next thing you need to set up is your email. Again, type the same thing, but when it comes to this point, you say instead of user.name, you say user.email. Then you type in your email, right? So again, now when it comes to the email that you use here, make sure that you use the same email that you're going to be using when you are creating your GitHub account. It has to be the same email, or else your changes will not be associated to you whenever you want to push your code to GitHub. So again, if your name in this case is if your email is jackdo, so you just say jackdo at email.com. Again, use the email that you're going to be using. If you don't use the right email here, then any changes that you make to GitHub, the thing about it, it can be able to still push the code that you're pushing to GitHub, but it will not be able to track any of those changes because they're not associated with you. When you come to GitHub, I'm going to show you this quickly. This is in my profile, right? Yeah. So there's this sort of map that you can see here, right? This map usually shows the contributions that you're making. Whenever you push your code to GitHub, it puts this blue dot. This is not blue. This is green. It puts this green dot somewhere on this map here. It can only do this if your account is linked. If the email that you used for GitHub account is the same email as the one that you have in or rather when you're configuring Git in your local machine. So make sure that you take note of those two things. Super, super important. If you don't, it will still push the code to GitHub. You'll be able to see the changes on the repositories, but there will not be this green dots that you see here. You see here, it will just be the gray blank dots that you're seeing right now. So that is super important. Once you've set up your email, then that is usually it. Now there's usually another a few other things you need to do. Now early on, this is if you guys remember during the this was around 2020, I believe. We had the Black Lives Matter and everything, and one of they're talking about the issue with slavery. They're talking about a lot of sort of societal issues, right? And the term master became a big issue on GitHub. Like people were like, master is not a good term, it's associated with slavery and everything. So as a result of that, we Git decided to basically, or GitHub, they decided to replace the term master with main, right? So this is what I'm talking about. The master main is a branch, right? Remember, like I mentioned, there are so many people working on the same project. At times, it's just you who is working on the same project, but a single project can have different branches into it, right? So you can have one project, but let's say the landing page is on a different branch, right? The authentication is on a different branch. The dashboard is on a different branch. You're basically separating each of the features on a different branch. But at some point, the reason you need them on different branches is so that you can be able to work on them separately and independently. But at some point, all these branches have to come together, right? So when they come together, they come to one main branch. So earlier on, we used to call that branch the master branch, right? But in this case, because there was that change, you need to always make sure that you set the main the that branch to default. You need to set it as main. So that is something that you can do here. Again, you can always do it for every repository, but you can easily do it in the beginning. So just say git. Oh, this should be config. I just noticed I used an F instead of a G. So git config hyphen hyphen global. Then after that, you will have init. Then you, because we are specifying our branch, you just say default branch default branch. Then you specify that you want your default branch to be main, right? This is what you see here. Now I already have this set for my machine, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. So you write that and then you hit enter. Like I mentioned, when you make commits are permanent snapshots that you're taking, right? Any change that you make is sort of permanent. You can always reverse that changes, but think of it again as a permanent snapshot of the changes that you make. They help you give an identity to the work that you're doing or the changes that you've made. And this identity makes it easy for the history of your contributions to be tracked. And in case there's any sort of auditing that needs to be done by either your manager, your teammates, or anyone else looking at your code, they can easily do that and note where the changes or the problems were. So setting up this main basically allows or rather avoids you to the use of the legacy master branch that I have mentioned. I believe that is pretty clear. Once you're done with the setup, then you can now go ahead and do what you refer to as authentication with GitHub, right? So there are different ways that you can do this. You can use HTTPS. You can also use SSH. Now, we recommend SSH. You can go ahead and uh, basically look at Google what HTTPS and SSH are to get more details on that. But ideally, we use we use SSH. This is the reason we use for it. I'm trying to think of an example here. You see, whenever you're let me use an example of logging into an application, right? Whenever you're logging into an application, let's say you have Instagram installed on your machine, right? Or on your device. When you want to use Instagram, you'll click on the Instagram application. Then it will open up. By default, you'll be able to log in. You're usually not prompted to log in every time you open your Instagram account, right? So we need to do the same for Git and GitHub, right? But in this case, basically the two, Git and GitHub. To do that, we set up an SSH key, right? So SSH key allows you to frequently push your code to GitHub and integrate everything without it forcing you to keep on re-authenticating yourself every time, right? Just think of how annoying it will be that every time you want to open your Instagram or your TikTok account, you basically have to, when you click on the app, you have to type in your name or your email and type in your password and then log in every freaking time. You don't want to be doing that, right? So in this case, we set up SSH keys for that. Now, to set up SSH keys, we basically the different ways that you can do that, right? So you can generate the SSH key first. So what you do is you just tag SSH. I believe there's somewhere you can go to see how to set up all this, but just say SSH dot keygen. Should be a dot, not hyphen. Dot keygen. So you say SSH dot keygen, then hyphen T. After this you specify the. It's like, what is the word I can use here? Okay, I don't know the word I'll use for this, but it's like a code that you type in that is going to help you come up with the SSH key. And in this case, we just say .ed, then you specify, you say 25, it is 25519. Then after that, you have a hyphen C followed by your email, right? So you'll have your email again. If your email is jack@do.com, if that is your email, then you hit enter, it's going to generate an SSH key for you. So at this point, this should be SSH keygen. Basically, this generator generates an SSH key. The SSH key that you're generating is the one that is going to be used in making sure that you don't authenticate yourself every time, right? What I'm going to do here, I think this should be the best way to do it. Okay, where is this? Nope. Me get. Okay, I'm trying to look for my tab here. Where is it? It's this one. Yeah. So I'm going to just basically I'm going to look for an article on how to set up SSH key with GitHub. I actually think GitHub already has something like this somewhere. Yeah, it's actually here, GitHub Docs. So you'll see here, adding a new SSH key to your GitHub account. Right? So you usually generate the SSH key from your local machine, then you'll be able to link it here. But what this helps you with, again, let me send you this link to the chat. This is the best way to help you, just so that I don't spend my time going through everything. Awesome. I believe you can see that link, right? So basically, what this is going to help you with this, what you see here, you'll select the operating system, of course, but it will detect it by default. Let's say we go to Windows. It will show you how to add a new SSH key to your GitHub account. Then you can be able to read through and follow this process, right? It shows you how to generate an SSH key, right? The commands that I used, these are the one I used, but you'll be able to just follow through everything here. Then after you've done this, it allows you to easily push your code to GitHub from your local machine without facing any challenges that you want to do. You want rather that you're going to face. It's annoying again to log in every time that you want to. I believe this is clear. Just give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if this makes sense on what I'm talking about here, or just let me know in the chat. Okay, again, if you feel lost, that's pretty okay. I'm going to have this recording available so that anyone can be able to just follow through and see, just walk through my rambling basically. Once you have set up your SSH key, once you've done this, then you can go back. You can now come back to starting to work with GitHub and everything that you need to do. So to work with GitHub, there's a few things that you need to do first. There's usually two ways that you can be able to follow for you to work with GitHub. The first thing is you'll come to GitHub, right? Again, my GitHub I've already sort of customized a number of things, so yours will most definitely not look like this. But once you have created your GitHub account, you can create a repository. So think of a repository like a folder that you create when you're creating a folder in your local machine. Then you want to be putting a few things into that folder. So you can create a folder for your photos. Then you have all your family photos in there. You create another folder for, let's say, your movies. Then you have all your movies in that folder. So that is what we refer to as a repository, right? Now, when you come to GitHub, there's this part that says repositories. I believe you can be able to see it. And then you can I have so many repositories here, but I'm going to show you how to create a new repository. So you come to new here, just click on new. Then you should be able to create a new repository. Just wait for a moment for it to load. Then you come here, you can type in your repository name, right? Now, this is just a test. Basically, I'm going to create a test repository. I'll just call it something like let's see. Okay, I already have so many repositories known as called. I'll just say test repo. I already have that already. Can you guys suggest a name for GitHub repository? Okay, I'll just say random. I'll just call it random. Random repo. Then you can give it a description if you want to. I'll just type something like this is random. This is a random repo demonstration for demonstration, something like that. So once you've created the repo, you'll see there's this part that says configuration here. So this helps you with a few things. You can be able to check anything that you want. So if you want the repository to remain public, by public it means that anyone can be able to access that repository whenever they open your GitHub account. You can be able to set that here. You can also set it to private if you want to. I'll just keep this public. Then the other thing is they start with a template. So there are a number of templates that you can start with here. But again, I'm not going to click on this. Just ignore that as well. The other thing is adding a README. So Think of a readme like this. Whenever you are creating, whenever you're writing an article, I don't know if an article makes sense, or are there any projects that you build, you need to provide a description of that project, right? So essentially that is what a readme does. A readme file is a file that explains the project, the purpose of that project, and if someone wanted to set up that project for themselves, how would they go about doing that? Right, so that is what this part does here, this readme. I'm going to open just my GitHub account here again, just a different on a different tab, and I'll open just a random repo, and I'll show you what that means. So this is repositories. I have one repo here that you can use. Let's say we use a repo like, okay, others are a bit. Let me just open this one. These are private repo, but just nothing too confidential there. So whenever you open that repo, you see here there's this part on the README. You see, it tells you the name of the repo, the what the repo does. This is basically a project that I built that helps me clear the cache on my browser like automatically, right? So this is what you can see. I can try to open it up for you actually. So you see here, auto cache clear. When I click on it, this is the application. So I can be able to clear my cache, clear cookies, a lot of other things. This is what it does, right? So you see, I have already described everything, what the applications does, what are the features of this application. Then there's the folder structure of the application there. If you want to contribute, there's so many of these things, right? If you want to set up the project, I've also explained that down below. So that is the purpose of this part that says README. Now, there are two ways that you can go about this. You can create your README here, or you can manually create it whenever you're building your project. For now, I'm just going to create it here. So I'll just click on, or rather, I'll just click that to on. Then you see when you go next here, there are a few more things that you can do. You can add a gitignore file. I'll explain to you what a gitignore file is. When you're building your projects, there are certain things that you don't push to GitHub. Like you've seen, you can be able to create a repository on GitHub that everyone has access to. You can make it public, right? Even if it's private, chances are someone is going to probably access that repo. You'll probably share the link with someone else, or like add contributors and everything to the repo. So there's certain information that we don't share to GitHub. So there's confidential information. Think about confidential information like this. Like API keys, right? When you're building an API, there's certain APIs that not building when you're working with an API. There are certain APIs that require you to have an API key. An API key is like a password, right? So just imagine again, you don't want to be sharing your passwords publicly, right? So think of that like this. So this readme file, or not readme, the .gitignore file helps you do that. It helps look at the once you create the file, you tell it that there are these specific files and folders that I have in my machine that I don't want you to share to GitHub, right? That is what it does. There, apart from those kinds of confidential information, there are also certain files that are just too big for you to share to GitHub. One of those files, if you've already worked with either React or even just vanilla JavaScript, you've probably come across what we refer to as node modules, right? So node modules, think of them like the assets that you have that are helping you build your projects and everything. You can always generate a new node module whenever you are setting up a project on a remote server, on a local server, any of that. So there's no need for you to push it, and it's usually a very heavy folder for you. So you don't also push that to GitHub. How you avoid that is you create a .gitignore file. I'm going to show you all these things in a moment, but it's important to understand this. So you can say you want to have a gitignore file. So you can come here, click on this, specify the kind of project that you're working on. Then the good thing about doing it here is that if you once you select the library that you're working with, it will automatically basically generate a list of files that you shouldn't be pushing to GitHub. So like here, let me see. Let me try. I'll just say Python maybe. So I'll select Python. Then it is going to create that. The other thing is a license. Whenever writing code, it usually needs to be in, or other different licenses have different use cases. Again, you can do your research on that. But if you want your code to be used by anyone and everyone, you can have it in, for example, under an MIT license. You can have a general public license, I'll just select an MIT license, click on it, and then create repository. So it's going to automatically create a repository for us. You see, it has created a repo, and I'll actually just share this link with you guys. You can go to GitHub and just check it out. Where is it? Here. So you can just click on that link. It will send you to this repo. You can be able to just see what I'm talking about here. Again, I believe the font is big enough, honestly. Okay. Then once you're done with this, once you've created your repo here, there's a number of things you need to do now. Remember, this repo only exists on GitHub. It does not exist in your local machine. Like you mentioned, whenever you have the building projects, there's the version that is available remotely, and then there's the version that is available within your machine, right? I see. What is the link? Guys, those of you who are joining on here, please go to Discord, and then you can be able to check the meeting link and join what you're doing here. So use the link on my bio. So this is, once you've done this, then you can start setting up the machine or the project in your local machine. But before we get into that, you see this random repo, and then this is a random repo for them. Ooh, I said demonstration. Don't mind that. Anyway, so this comes from README. So readme.md file. We said that this is the file that is for descriptions. Then there's the gitignore. So if I click on gitignore, you'll see it's generated a list of files. This is the list of files that Python projects usually have, and these are files that we don't push to GitHub. So it automatically generated that. Then if you go to license, I selected the MIT license. You'll come here, you can read through what the MIT license allows you to do. So you see here, permissions, all that. Again, for now, just be selecting MIT license unless you're building some project that is like, super secretive, has some proprietary information that no one can be able to figure out, that kind of thing. But now we need to make this project available in our local machine. That is the next step. How we do that is I'm going to come to let me just clear this. As you can see, this folder is empty. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to code. Then this is the reason why I mentioned you need to set up your SSH keys. It's very important. The reason for that is that you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to re-authenticate yourself every time that you want to commit to GitHub or get some code, all that. So as you see, whenever I click on code, you see there's this, we have HTTPS, then there's SSH. Again, I always recommend SSH. SSH is good for you there. So this is use password protected SSH key, all that. Anyway, all you need to do is you need to copy this link. So you copy this link, then you want to have this project on your local machine. So you see there's also this part that says download zip, right? You don't need to download zip, honestly. And then all you need to do is come here to your terminal. Again, in your case, you'll move to like PowerShell or the terminal that comes with, once you have already installed Git in your machine, downloaded and installed. So what I'll do here, I'll say git clone, right? So what git clone does is, again, the term clone, it clones the repository on GitHub, creates a copy of it in the local machine. So I'll just say git clone. Then I'm going to paste in the link that I just copied from here. This SSH link that I just copied there. So I'll do that and I'll hit enter. Then let's give it a minute. So as you can see, again, this was pretty quick because the project is not that heavy, just a few files. So right now, if I try to list and see the files, you see I have a random repo that has been created in my local machine, right? Again, you can also use this command on your PowerShell or on your terminal to see. ls stands for list. So it allows you to list the files that exist in a specific folder or directory. So you see there's random repo, same thing that we call it here, right? I can cd basically change into the random repo. We can see I got into the random repo. You see git main. So this is super important. This is how you know that you're working with Git repository, because it has this git main. The reason it has this is because, again, I already set up everything on GitHub. I'm going to show you the other process in a moment as well. So if I try to list the files, you'll see we have the license is there, readme.md is there as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this on Visual Studio Code. So I'll just say code space full stop, and that is it. So basically this says that you want to open Visual Studio Code on this specific directory. right? So once I do that, you'll see these are the files that we have. Let me just close this, and I'll just increase the font a little bit. You see, we have gitignore. Again, this file is the same that we have on GitHub. Gitignore, same files, license, same thing, readme as well, same thing that we saw. You can be able to see, I believe now it's making sense why it works like this, right? So I'm going to close that as well. But actually, I'm going to show you something. If you go to readme here, I hope it's okay. At some, it's going to pick this up at some point. But at some point, you're going to see my name show up somewhere here, basically to show that I'm the one who owns this repository or who met this specific change. Actually, you can be able to see it right now. You can see it's like in light gray, but you can see my name is there. It says that I made this change 6 minutes ago, and the name of it is initial commit. It's already even picked it up here. You can see one author, all that. When you're working on a project with many people, it will show you here, there's a number of authors. So if 3 or 4 different people contribute to this repository, it's going to show here 2, 3 people, show their names, show their. This is why we say during the configuration process, you had to specify, or rather specify the name that is going to be associated to you whenever you're making changes to GitHub. I hope that is clear. So once you've done this, I'm going to just close this down. There are many other things that you can do. But before we get into most of those things, I'm going to show you the other way that you can create a GitHub repository. So this is step number 2. I'll just move back here. Then what I'll do is I'm going to create a folder. So I'm going to create a folder here. Not that I'm using Linux commands or terminal commands to do my navigation. You can do this as well, use the same commands I'm using, or you can just, right click, use your mouse to just move around. But I just feel it's too much using your mouse all the time. But I'm going to create a folder here, and I'm going to call this folder, let me call it something like Jekdo repo. Again, just a random name. Then I'm going to move to that folder, Jekdo repo here, right? I'm going to open this on GitHub. So I'll open another GitHub window here. You should be able to see this is the GitHub window. Once I've created this GitHub window, as you can see again, it's called that. It's pretty empty. You already know how to navigate on GitHub, but how you do this is I'm going to come here to the file. Let me just close this down here. So I'm going to come here and create a file. I call this file maybe intro. Okay, just call it something like hello.py. I'm creating a simple Python file, right? Then inside of this file, I can just print a simple message. I'll just say print, and I'll say print hello world. We already have this. Again, we don't have to get too much into this. But point is, we have a file. The file has some information in it, right? Once you've done this, the next thing you need to do is basically go to your terminal. You can do now. This is super important. If you don't use the external terminal or PowerShell or command prompt, you can use the terminal that exists within Visual Studio Code. So you can just come here, terminal, new terminal, do that. The other way that you can get your terminal is by just dragging it from the bottom. So you can just come here, drag it as well. But we have our terminal as well. Once you have the terminal, you need to create a GitHub repository. Remember, in this case, a Git repository. What we have here, let me show you this quickly. What you have here on this is a GitHub repository. This is available on GitHub. But you can, when you have it in your what you have in your local machine is a Git repository that you create, right? How you create this Git repository, use this command known as git init. So you just say git init, or basically git initialize. So it is going to initialize a Git repository on here. I hit enter. You see it says initialized empty Git repository on this specific repo here, right? And as you can see, this Git main has already come here automatically. It wasn't there before, but it's now here. This is the reason why it creates this. If you look at here, if you look on here, you'll not be able to see the file, but it creates a file known as a .git file. Then this .git file is the one that basically helps us recognize that this is a Git repository. Once you've done this, you can start now making changes to your, or rather tracking the changes that you make to your files. You can be able to do all that stuff. Before I show you, let me see if there's any question here that you need me to answer. You guys are not asking questions. Again, just give me a thumbs up if you're following and if any of this makes sense. Awesome. So I'll just proceed. I'll just proceed. Again, those of you who are joining on TikTok, check the link on my bio. The link on my bio is going to take you to Discord. Then on Discord, I've shared the meeting link. Anyone can join that meeting. Okay. So once you have created all this, once you have created a Git repository, you need to start tracking the changes that you make, right? So to track your changes, there are a few things that you do. When we were talking about the learning outcomes, we mentioned basically the steps, the staging areas, and everything. So the first thing you need to do is you need to basically stage your changes. How you stage your changes is like, so you just say git add, then you can specify the name of the file, or you can say that you want to track all the changes that have been made. In this case, we only have one file, so you can just say git add full stop. In this case, when you say full stop, we are basically just telling it that I want you to stage all the changes that exist on this specific directory or this specific folder, right? So think of your working directory, which in this case this is our working directory. Think of your working directory as the files that you're working with right now, right? The same thing, you'll sit at your office, at your desk, you have something or some files that you're working on. Think of it like that. So that is your working directory. In this case, this is our working directory, the folders that you can see here. Then think of also the staging area, which is what you want to do right now. Think of it as you're at a supermarket or you're shopping online. Then you need to add your items to a shopping cart. Think of staging area like that. So it's like adding something to a shopping cart. So we'll take it add full stop. Then once you do that, if you do this, if you do, let's say get status is a commit, not a commit, is a command that tells you the status of your Git repository, right? So you can see here, it tells you that on branch main, of course, no commits yet, changes to be committed. It tells you that these are the changes that you need to commit, right? So these are the changes. Then there's this command that tells you here, git rm cached and stage. Let me just run this command just to show you what it does. So just say, okay, no, should be like, this should be a C here. So double hyphen, then you specify our file is hello.py. You hit enter. Then now if you do git status again, you see this is what to get back to. What I've done basically is I have unstaged my changes. Basically, I added an item to a shopping cart, and then I've decided to remove it and put it back on the shelf like that. I did that so that I can show you what you have initially before you stage your changes. This is what you usually have. You have untracked files, right? So because you have untracked files, it's going to show in red, like that. But once you start tracking, once you start putting your items to the cart, you say git add space full stop, or you can just pass in the name of the file. In this case, it's hello.py. You hit enter. Then if you do git status one more time here, you see it changes the color from red to green. It's basically telling you that you've started to track this file. Then whatever changes you make to this file or you've made to this file, you need to commit these changes, right? So to commit the changes, again, like I mentioned earlier on, think of a commit as a snapshot, right? So as a snapshot that you're basically giving the changes that you've made a specific, let's call it like an identifiable, a unique identifiable key. Then this is the key that is going to be used to track that specific version of changes that you made to your code. So how you add a commit is you say git commit hyphen m. You have a full the opening closing quotes there. Then you write your commit message. A commit message is simply a message that explains the changes that you have made to your file, right? So if you created a file, you just say maybe created file called abcd. This is what this file does. The thing about a commit message is that it has to be descriptive enough. It has to be descriptive enough so that anyone going through your code will understand that this snapshot does abcd. Think about the scenario that we talked about earlier on. you've made changes to your code, and then those changes have maybe broken. They need to know, you need to basically revert back to the version of your code that was working. How you know which version of your code was working is because you gave that version of your code a name, in this case a message, some sort of message that is descriptive of what that is, right? When you go to GitHub, but just before I type this in, when you go back to GitHub, you'll see this part that says initial commit. This is the commit message, right? Because this is our first commit, we usually just refer to it as initial commit, like that. You hit enter as well, you see how this basically tells you that you have created a snapshot of your file, and you can see it even gives it a code and everything, right? I'll just clear this for now. If we do git status one more time here, you'll see that it says the branch main is clean, nothing to commit, right? Once you have done this, you move to the second step or second phase of working with Git. You create a repository on GitHub. Remember, this repository only exists on your local machine, right? So we are now doing the opposite of what you were doing earlier. So this repository only exists in your local machine. What you do now is you go to GitHub. Let me come here. I'll go back and go to repositories. Then I'm going to create a repository. So you create a repository, and I'd like you to be just be very keen on this. Yeah, there's a huge difference. So this one is called jackdo repo. I'll just call it that as well. Jack hyphen do repo, like that. Then you can give it a description if you want to. Again, I'll just say something like this is a test repo. You don't have to give it one, but again, do it if you'd like to. Then now, when you do this, you don't select any of these other files. All you do is make sure you do want it to be public or private. I'll just maintain it public, but do not select any of these other things that you see here. So what you do is go ahead and create a repository. Simple as that. Now, believe you see the difference between this and the previous one. The difference here is that you're taken to a different page that shows you a few things. The first thing that you can see here are this set of commands, and then there's a second set of commands as well. The first set of commands tells you that you can create a new GitHub repository on the command line. So this is basically one. You have just maybe created the repository, then you want to set up and do the connection before you make any changes to your file. Then there's this second part that says, or push an existing repository from the command line. So this is the one that we go with because we already have an existing repository in our local machine. So we go with this second part. You can copy these commands one by one, or you can just copy all of them at once. Basically, this first command here, you can see it is the same that also here. This first command is the one that is going to help link the it's going to help link the file on the repository on GitHub and the repo that exists on your local machine. Then this is going to basically get the main branch. Then it specifies that you want to push the code to GitHub. I'm going to just copy this and I'll paste it all here. I'll hit enter. Again, you can copy one by one, but I don't want to do that. I just want to copy everything. So you do that, you see it has copied everything as well. Then when you come back here, all you need to do is you need to refresh this page. Just hit refresh and give it a moment. You can see again, now it has created the repo. It has pushed the changes. If you look at our local repo, we only have a single file called hello.py, and this file has this should have been print. It's okay. We're going to come to this in a moment. Then you can see here, if you click on this file, you see the initial comment we wrote is right there. This is the message that our code contains, right? Now, because we did this, I need to update this. I need to make it print instead of print, what we had before. So I can make the change, and then I can save the change, right? But once I have done that, because it's a new change that I've made to my code, this is how you know it is tracking everything. Like once you initialize a Git repository on your local machine, it tracks everything. Whether you add a new space, you add a comma anywhere, it tracks all those things. What you do now here is just start with maybe git status. Then you'll see that it tells you that you're on the branch or that you have changes that have not been staged. And it tells you that there's this hello.py that has been modified. Not that earlier on it was telling us that it is a new file, but right now it is telling us that this file has been modified, right? So because of that, all you need to do is just type in git add. Remember the same processes that we did before. So you stage your changes. You add the item to the basket. Then once you've done that, you commit. So you just say git commit dash m. So you're sort of being like, I added this item to the basket. I need to buy it. Basically, that's what you're doing with the commit. You specify. You write a commit message. So in this case, I'll just say something like fixed. I'll just say fix typo in hello uh, hello.py file. Again, this, as you can see here, this message is descriptive of the change that I made. That is the one thing that you always have to make sure of. Then when I hit enter, you can see it tells us all that, and then I can now push the code to GitHub. This is where another difference comes in. You can still, okay, you remember the command that was there before. It was git push, then it was git push origin main, right? Right now, because we're still on the main branch, this is a subsequent push that you're doing. You can just say git push, then hit enter, and it will automatically make these changes available on GitHub. Let's confirm that. I'll come here. We're going to refresh this page. Once we do the refreshing, you'll see here. Let's wait for it to show that this point. Okay, yeah, you see here it tells you it even tells you the time. Usually everything that you do is time stamped. So I've made this change right now. You see it says the message, that commit message that I made, fix typo, like that. And then this is hello.py. You can be able to see this is the file that you're working with. If I click on this, you'll come here and see the change. We have already made the change, right? So this is what you're doing. I'm sure that everyone, what does Git track for any language? Yeah, it tracks everything. It tracks all the changes that you make. Like, it doesn't matter what that is. It tracks everything, right? So now, if I click on this commit message, just to show you that it made the change, and there's a difference between the files, you'll see it tells you the one in red is the previous change that was there. Then the one in green is the new change that we have added, or that we have made. That is, yeah. Those of you are online, again, if you want to join the meeting, go to Discord and then join the meeting. You'll see everything. Okay. Is there a question? Just give me a thumbs up if we're together. Any question? Is there something that does not make sense out of everything that we've done so far? Again, we haven't scratched the surface. We're still doing the basics of Git. So we'll probably do more advanced stuff later on a different session, but we're still doing the basics. Okay, let me go back to the main repo. So these are the two different ways that you can create a repo. You can create a repo here. You can create a repo on GitHub. Then once you've created it on GitHub, you can clone that repo and have it in your local machine. Or you can create a repo on your local machine, then push it to GitHub. In this case, of course, GitHub is your remote repository. So you can do it either way, right? So that's basically it. Now, whenever you're tracking your changes, you can track your changes either way as well. So you can track the changes that you make to GitHub fully, the other changes as well. You can go to just track them as well. Okay, so I think I'm not sure that there are any more questions. There's a lot that usually goes into working with Git and GitHub, right? So we haven't talked about branching. We haven't talked about merging the changes that you need to make. There's also those things. I'll explain them, but we're not going to cover them just because of time. Uh, Basically, when you're working on a project, even if you are the only one working on that project, sometimes you need to separate different items that you're working on, right? So it should be features. You can have one feature for something else, another feature for something else. The point is you need to separate all these features. How you do that is you create a branch. A branch is basically, it's like the main tree. Like a branch still contains all the files that exist on the main repository. It's just that it is a branch. So on this branch, you make different changes, and then you can merge them later onto the main branch once you're done working on the specific feature. So there's all that, but that is a bit more, it's not really advanced, but still one of the basics of GitHub. But because of time, we can be able to do that later on. Right. I'm not sure if there's something else that I think we should look at right now. I think the only thing that we haven't done are the branching and many of the other advanced ways of working with Git and GitHub. But for now, I believe that this one is enough for today. I'm going to pause for any questions, any comments that you want to make, all of that. For now, let me first of all end this recording. I hope it was clean. I doubt if it was.